Yes! We'll take it!
Cause I'm just an early tier list, baby. Don't talk about me if the takes don't end up panning out. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Garbage Rollers YouTube channel, where we are interrupting your regularly scheduled programming to bring you an ill-advised tier list video. As of this video's publication, the final officially spoiled leader from Swoo's second set, Shadows of the Galaxy, has been spoiled for a little less than 24 hours, and that means that we know who all 18 of the leaders are and what they do, and really that is all that we need to declare whether they're good or bad and treat our own analysis as gospel. So that is exactly what we're going to do. Did you ask for this tier list, dear viewer? No. But at this point in our content creation lifespan, our ratio of like quality videos to incendiary rabble is like way off. And if we're going to keep it up here on YouTube, we've really got to increase our output of crap material. So I'm here to answer the call. If you don't know me, I'm Jayson. My screen name is ImpossibleGerman. You don't see me here on our YouTube much. I am more often found writing pieces for the Garbage Rollers website, but I am known to make the occasional piece of quality video content. My official role title on the crew here is columnist, and that title's fine. It's mostly accurate. So, without further ado, let's talk about the leaders in Set 2 and how viable we expect them to be. Mostly, we're talking about viability and constructed in Premiere, but if there are specific notes about limited about how these leaders play in draft or sealed, then I'll probably mention them as we go. So, let's get to it. We've got the good old-fashioned tier list here. We've got 5 tiers from S all the way down to garbage. Branding. And we're going to start with our boy, Mr. Gar Saxon. I missed these episodes of whatever show this is, so I'm not super familiar with the guy's lore or how well this matches up, but his traits are outstanding. He's an Imperial Mandalorian official, and every friendly upgraded unit just gets +1 attack when he deploys. He deploys at 6 resources. He's a 4/7, and he keeps that attack boost, but every upgraded unit also gets, when defeated, you can return an upgrade that was attached to it to the owner's hand. So you get some upgrade, recursion, and just general upgrade synergy. This is really, really cool. I've been a big advocate of Villain Blue as not being pigeonholed into control. One of the decks that I love in Set 1 is Krennic Red, that kind of leans into a more mid-range slant in this color, and I think it's possible that Gar is going to do that kind of deck really, really well, maybe even better than Krennic. I'm pretty high on him, honestly. I think he's straightforward. I think his stats are good. I think will be a little bit of a challenge to deck build with him because you have to skew more events in than you normally would, but you're getting really good value out of those events for the most part, extra value that you wouldn't necessarily normally be getting. And so it may not pan out, but there's just such good fundamentals here that I'm feeling an A for Gar. I think he's gonna be home to some really special mid-range stuff. And he's already got some really cool Mandalorian cards in this color that synergize with him, as well as a card called Brutal Traditions that is an upgrade that you can continually kind of pull out of your discard pile. And so he's got good card support already, and he's got good fundamentals. I think he'll be great. Next, we're going to talk about Qi'ra. I Alone Survive. She's Underworld traded, another Villain Blue leader. She has an interesting ability where you pay a resource and you tap her, and then you deal 2 damage to a friendly unit, and then you give it a shield. And then she deploys at 5 resources. She's a 0/8, but with grit. And when she deploys, she heals all damage from every unit. That's double-sided. It's going to be your units and your opponent's units. And then you deal damage to each unit equal to half its remaining HP, rounded down. The conversation around this leader has been really interesting. It can be tough to wrap your head around how to use it. Obviously, your head goes to grit, the ability that increases your attack for however much damage you have on you, and she's obviously great with that. But Grit alone is kind of a risky thing to build a deck around because it depends on your units being closer to death. The shield side, the leader side, is something that I really think has a chance to be good. Any grit unit being able to spend a resource to boost its attack by 2 and give a shield to it, I think that's really, really solid value. And so, you can get a critical mass of grit going, and she's going to be great. It's this deployed thing. I'm convinced that it's going to find a deck because it's just so splashy. It does something that nobody else can do. It's not the splashiest leader deploy in the game. That probably still belongs to Palpatine. But it's just a huge effect. It's one of those terraforming type things that totally changes the board. And so when I think about abilities like that, my inclination is that they're going to find a deck some way, somehow. And I would be a little bit less likely to feel positive about her future if it wasn't for this deploy side that I genuinely think is just really, really good. I think that spending a resource for this effect is genuinely high value if you build around it well. And so with a leader ability that I trust and a very intense deploy ability that I think will find a deck eventually, I'm going to be a little hot and I'm going to put her in B. I don't think that she'll get there this set, but I think she'll come up on us. I don't know. I think it could happen. There's enough going on here. I think it could happen. We've got Finn. He's a fringe trooper. At this moment in time, I guess they're not saying that he's resistance just based on where he's at in the movies. And he has got an action on his leader side to defeat a friendly upgrade on a unit. And if you do give a shield token to that unit, it has to be the same unit. He deploys at 5 resources. He's a 4/6. That's pretty solid. And then he kind of has that same ability, but this time it's on attack. He may defeat a friendly upgrade and then give a shield token to that unit if he does. The stats are nice. Like 5/4/6 is Leia, except Leia is a 3 attack with raid. This is a little bit better than that. Bossk is a 5/4/6. These are totally fine stats. Trooper is good in terms of the keywords. Fringe doesn't do anything yet, but it could. I think my concern with Finn is that this ability isn't super flexible, and it's also not crazy impactful. And those things wouldn't be huge deal breakers, except this is not a very flexible ability. If it was, you could give a shield token to any unit, then we'd be talking, but it's got to be the same unit. And so I don't know. It's kind of all these things at once. It's kind of an ability that doesn't do as much as you want it to, I don't think, because whatever you're doing to get this shield, you're losing value. Compare that to Qi'ra, where you're going to get a shield out of it, but that damage that you're dealing, you can build in such a way that you're gaining something. The only thing that Finn can potentially do to gain something... Oh, well, no, excuse me. I almost misspoke. If it was... Again, it's that lack of flexibility. If it was defeat an upgrade on a unit, then this guy is the ultimate anti-bounty leader. But it's not. It's got to be a friendly upgrade on a unit. And so it's that lack of flexibility where it has to be a friendly upgrade and the shield has to go on the same unit. I just don't know if it's worth the hoops. Is kind of where I'm at. And so for the moment, I'm going to park him in C. I'm just not a believer. Next, we've got Rey, who is more than a scavenger. She's force and fringe. One of those traits doesn't matter at all right now. One of those traits is fantastic. For a resource, you can tap her, and then you can give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power. It doesn't have anything to do with cost. It only has to do with power. She deploys on 6 resources. She's only got 2 attack, and she's only got 6 health. So compared to other 6 deploy leaders, the stats are a little bit lacking. But she has a whopping Restore 3, which is immense. And then on attack, she gets to do that leader side ability for free. She can give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power when she attacks. Doesn't pay a resource to do that. A lot of people's first take on this is that she's kind of weird Luke. Luke can give a shield for a resource with his leader side and then does that same thing for free once he deploys. But this has some very different implications to Luke. one thing I want to talk about is that there are absolutely no restrictions other than the power on the unit that she can give an experience token to. Luke has to do hero units, and she doesn't. And so when you compare this to units like, or leaders like Finn and Luke, this is really flexible. Anything in the game that comes in with 2 or less power is worth considering in Rey. It's just a very flexible ability. And then as for the flip turn, the stats aren't great, but Restore 3 is game changing. And if the opponent can't instantly answer Rey and you get the Restore 3 off, that's a big swing in and of itself. God forbid you get to swing her more than once. I mean, goodness gracious, Restore 3 is just a lot. It's one of the big reasons that the Luke Legendary unit is such a big deal. And I think if you're packing additional sources of Restore into Rey, you are looking at a deck that can just crank out an immense amount of healing. I wasn't super high on Rey when I first saw her. I'm still not sure that it's a deck that I'm personally interested in, but the more I've thought about her, Rey's just going to have a lot of targets like forever. I mean, she's going to get viable new partners every single set because her ability is so flexible. And so I am totally ready to park her in A. I'm actually going to put her above Gar just because I think her future looks really, really bright, and any weenie deck in Hero is going to want to take a close look at Rey. I think she's really flexible. Next, we're on to Hondo. He's an underworld leader. He's got an ability on him that says, when you play a card using Smuggle, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, you give an experience token to a unit. He deploys at 6. He's a 3/7 with Raid 1, so kind of a 4/7. And then he's got that same thing going on this side. Whenever you play a card using Smuggle, you may give an experience token to a unit. There's no limit on this. You do it every time you play a card using Smuggle, so it can happen multiple times per turn. And you are going to give an experience token to any unit that you want. It doesn't have to be the unit that you just smuggled or anything like that. So there's a lot of flexibility here. The stats are fine, and yet I'm hesitant. And I think the reason that I'm hesitant is that I don't believe in Smuggle yet. A lot of the cards that we've seen for Smuggle, it gives you flexibility on your resourcing and it gives you card advantage. But playing above curve like that, it's unproven. And I'm not entirely positive. There's one more leader in this set who's also built around Smuggle. And both of them have really good fundamentals that I just am a little concerned about because I'm not positive about Smuggle as a mechanic in terms of building a whole deck around it. And so I'm probably being a little too skeptical about Hondo, but for the moment, I'm going to park him at the top of C. He's got good value, unlimited smuggling, getting you experience tokens is cool, and it does have value. But will there be a deck where he really pulls his weight, and will that deck be great? Right now, I'm a little too skeptical to place him higher than C. Definitely high on my list of leaders that I think I could be wrong about. The other command villainy leader for this set is Jabba the Hutt. He was the last spoiled. We got him just today when I record this. He's Underworld. He's Hutt. I will lose my mind if Hutt is a trait that they do a whole ton of stuff with. He has an action where you tap him. It says choose a unit, and for this phase, it gains bounty. The next unit you play this phase costs 1 resource less. Pretty interesting. If you control 7 or more resources, you deploy him. So he's a 7 deploy, 2/12. That is a big old butt, but not a lot of attack. On deploy at 7 resources, another friendly unit, that kind of stinks, you really wish it could be him, is going to capture an enemy non-leader unit. So a totally flexible capture. It doesn't matter how powerful the other unit is or anything like that, or even what arena it's in. You just capture it as long as you have any other friendly unit that you can stuff it under. And then he has a different version of that leader side ability where he taps, choosing unit. For this phase, it gains bounty. The next unit you play this phase costs 2 less. One thing that is worth noting, absolutely nothing is stopping you from using the leader side to put a bounty on a unit and then doing it again after you deploy for a total discount of 3 less on the next unit you play, if you can kill that unit. This guy is super new. The conversation around him hasn't had much of a chance to evolve yet, because we just got him spoiled today. But if you're asking me, if I'm going to be playing like a control-y deck in these colors, I would choose this guy over Palpatine almost every time, just for my style of play. What I like about him is that his leader ability, unlike Palps, is going to help you stay ahead as you go. Palp's leader ability is just a little too marginal. Most of the time, you're having to kill your own units to get cards and a little bit of damage, and it's like, woof, you know? It doesn't really help you control the board, and it can be really hard to get up to your deploy turn. Jabba, if he plays carefully and he's able to get units off the board, and there's really hardly any deck in Star Wars Unlimited that can't make that happen with a decent amount of consistency. If he's able to get units off the board, he's going to be getting resource advantage off of the units that he plays really consistently. And playing that kind of resource up semi-ramp game is going to help him get the value trades that will get him deployed and help you last all the way till 7. Sometimes 7 feels like a long time in this game. If you're playing against a really heavy aggro deck, the game can be over before then a lot of the time. But Jabba's got a tool, a really potent one, that can help him get there. And then when he deploys, he's really hard to get off the board. He's got 12 health. He's going to get a free removal effect that has very few restrictions. And then on top of that, his little ramp thing gets buffed. And then on top of that, we've already seen some really cool cards that synergize with him, like Salacious Crumb, who only costs 1, and so Jabba can often crank him out for free. And then the 8-cost 9/9 Rancor unit that he gets a discount on automatically, and if you get both of the bounties off, you could potentially play that 9/9 for 4 resources on the Jabba flip turn, along with his when played ability or an on-attack ability. I forget which one it is. Whatever it is, it's ridiculous. Look, I think Jabba, I think he's great. I just have a hard time seeing where this guy doesn't make a big impact. I think he's going to be really fun to build around. I think he's going to be one of those high deploy leaders who's really impactful when he deploys, but he's just more able to consistently get there than some of the other late game leaders that we've seen. I am totally ready to park him at the top of A. I almost want to put him in S. I think Jabba's really cool, and I haven't seen a lot of the high deploy control leaders that I'm really interested in playing. Jabba's one of them. I think he sounds like tremendous fun. Then we've got Moff Gideon, one of our starter leaders. He is pretty awesome. He's an Imperial official. You can tap him to attack with a unit that costs 3 or less, and if it's attacking a unit, it gets +1 for that attack. He deploys on 5. He's a 3/6 with Overwhelm, and then he turns that action tap ability into a static effect. So each friendly unit that costs 3 or less just gets +1 attack as an aura effect, and they gain Overwhelm while they're attacking an enemy unit. I really like this guy. I've liked him from the moment that he was revealed. I've messed with him in every single color except for double green, and I liked him everywhere. Every single color has low-cost units that you want to trade with. And sometimes the difference between a regular trade and a great trade is exactly what Moff Gideon is offering you, this +1 attack. And so there is a little bit of a tension with him because he's centered around low-cost units, which are slanted to be more aggro, but he also wants those units to attack other units, which is more of a control thing. Aggro decks would rather be hitting base the majority of the time if they can get away with it. Everybody has to hit units at some point, but if you're aggro, it's not like plan A. And so there is this tension between the small unit thing and the control-y attacking units thing. But I think when you see the deploy side, it makes a lot more sense. What you want to do is you want to be controlling the game until you get to this deploy turn where you pop out Gideon and then all of your units have overwhelm, and then that becomes like a win con in and of itself. Moreover, it's a win con that happens at 5 resources, which is pretty early, and a lot of the things that could clear out a bunch of your weenies, like Super Laser Blast or something, it's just too early for any of that. And so I think all the pieces really add up with Moff Gideon. I'm very excited to play him. I've enjoyed him most in blue. I think he's just really cool there. There's a lot of, Death Trooper and Imperial synergy that you can play around with in that color. The guy just has reach. He's got a win con on his deploy side. I think he's great. I am going to park him even above Jabba for now. I think people are sleeping on Gideon a little bit. There's a lot of stuff that I like going on there. Controversial Boba Fett hero leader. A lot of people were surprised that we got another Boba Fett leader so quickly. But if you've ever talked with Jim Cartwright or the other members of the team at FFG, these guys just love Boba. And so I'm not quite as surprised. He is a green hero leader. He's underworld traded. And when you play a unit that has one or more keywords, you can exhaust him, and if you do, you give any friendly unit, it doesn't necessarily have to be that one, +1/+0 for this phase. When he deploys, he's a 4/7, just like Villain Boba, but womp womp, he deploys when he should deploy at 6 resources instead of Boba Villain's crazy 5. And then that tap effect from the front side becomes a static effect. Each other friendly unit that has one or more keywords gets +1 attack. The leader side is really flexible, so you can play a unit and then next turn you play a unit with a keyword and you can buff the ready unit instead of buffing the unit that you just played, so you're more likely to get value out of the buff than you would be otherwise. So the flexibility is good, and there's absolutely no restriction on any of this other than the fact that it has a keyword. And that's not really much of a restriction. I mean, we love keywords. Sentinel is a great keyword. Overwhelm is a great keyword. Ambush is the keyword that most people are talking about with Boba because it specifically synergizes the leader, or the unit can buff itself. And so any ambush unit out of Boba is going to come in with +1 attack and potentially able to get more of a reach than they otherwise would. And that's just super solid. Think about Han unit. I think it's Reluctant Hero from set 1. He's ambush and he's got a quick strike effect, and he comes in for 7 resources at a 6/6. Now that's great, but a lot of leaders have 7 health. A lot of units have 7 health, and Han can't quite get that first strike effect off because he just doesn't quite have enough attack power, and you can't buff him on the way in. Well, Boba can buff him on the way in, and so he's just going to one-shot Boba leader, take absolutely no damage in return, and there's a lot of units that he can do that too. And that's just one example of the kinds of things that you can do with just one keyword, with just ambush in Boba Hero. I think that he's really solid. He's boring. A lot of people think he's boring, but I'm a boring person, and I like solid fundamentals, and the guy offers solid fundamentals. So I am feeling Boba Hero, despite the fact that a lot of people don't think he should exist, and I don't know. I like him. This is my favorite color combination, so I may be a little bit biased, but I'm pretty high on him, and the early testing on him has been very promising as well. Hunter, the Outcast Sergeant. He is Fringe clone. He is a hero command leader who has an action for a resource. You tap him. This is kind of hard to wrap your head around. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to summarize it for you. What you do is you reveal a resource that you control, and if it shares a name with a friendly unique unit, you return the resource to its owner's hand, and you put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So basically, if your resource and a unit on the field match, then you're going to get another copy of that unit added to your hand. That does put you a card up, so it's a functional card draw. And then when he deploys, on 7 resources. He's a 5/8 overwhelm, which is fantastic. Even at 7 resources, that's a really good stat line. And then on attack, he gets to do that thing again, but it doesn't cost a resource this time. So again, if you have a unit out, a unique unit, and it shares a name with the resource in your resource row, then you get to add that resource to your hand and replace it from the top of your deck. It's a really good body that takes a long time to get to, and the ability on the leader side isn't necessarily helping you last to the deploy turn. 7 resources is a lot. This is card draw. It's just card draw with like a lot of hoops. And on top of that, it's not free. It costs a resource, even if you can jump through all those hoops. Moreover, the card that you draw is specifically going to be a unique card that is already on the board. And so unless the unit that you have kicks the bucket, the odds of you being able to use that card for anything other than resourcing are low. You really need the original unit to die. All of this adds up to something that just makes me hesitant. I think he could be really good. I think that this color is set up to have a 7 deploy leader and be fine. You've got a lot of really, really cool late game stuff in this color range, like Home 1 and U-Wing, but is Hunter doing enough to justify the waiting that you're doing? For the moment, my inclination is that he's not. I'm going to park him, I think, below Finn in the C tier. No, above Finn on the C tier. I really don't believe in Finn. I think Hunter, just by virtue of that body, is going to have a deck. And all the Bad Batch stuff is really cool. You throw Marauder and Echo and all that in there, and you're going to have a lot of cool, unique units and a lot of density in finding them. You know, it could happen, but is the upside really worth what you jump through? I think for now the answer is no. Bossk also has to jump through some hoops, but it's a little different. Underworld, Bounty Hunter. He is an aggression villain leader. You tap him, and you can deal 1 damage to a unit with a bounty, and you optionally may give it +1 for this phase. That's just a kicker for your own units if you happen to play any units that have bounties on them, and that gives you a little additional flexibility. Bossk totally did not need that kicker. I'm glad that it's optional, but he totally did not need that kicker to be good. It's just kind of there. When you deploy him, it's 5 resources, nice and early. He's a 4/6, and this is really splashy. When you collect a bounty, you may collect that bounty again. You use that ability only once per round. You could double a top target to heal 12 flipping damage from your base. You could double the ramp that you get off of price on your head. I think I'd have to look at that again, but anyway, something there would be cool. The guild target one that does damage to the base, I think you could do up to 6 damage to the base with Bossk out. Any of these bounties they're just the way that Fantasy Flight has balanced the bounties. They're going to be hard to slot because they're not an event. They're not an upgrade in the traditional sense, and so they don't do a lot to advance your own board condition unless you're jumping through the hoop of killing that unit. Not a huge hoop, but it is a hoop. They're hard to slot, and so by their nature, they've made the payoffs of these bounties pretty juicy, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be playable. So that's just kind of how bounties naturally skew, is they're very good payoffs for the resources. And then Bossk can double that on his leader side, or on his deployed side. I think that because the deployed side is so flashy, not as many people are talking about the leader side, which is free damage, which is great. And again, it's not that big of a hoop because the bounties so far have been very, very playable. What you really would need is just a reason to slot them over other things, and Bossk is a heck of a reason. I just think he's probably already there. I am hesitant about this placement because I don't know whether we're going to end the set with enough good bounties in specific color combinations to really get him there. And obviously heading into the future, other decks will continue to get more tools, and it's likely that bounties won't be released at the same pace as things like weenie units for Rey or upgrades for Gar, right? Despite all that, I just think that Bossk is going to get there in competitive. He's got several color combinations that look fantastic. He's got so many bounties already that the prospect of getting free damage off of them and potentially doubling them is just really high value. His ceiling is just to the moon, and his floor is fine. I think that Bossk is our first S tier, and I am a little scared. So we'll see how it works out. Kylo Ren is our other aggression villain leader. He's got an action. You tap him, you discard a card from your hand, and you give a unit +2 for this phase. He's got the critical force trait, and then first order, which doesn't do a whole lot yet. When you deploy him at 4 resources, super early, he's got 5 attack, but there's a caveat there. He's got 4 health, so he's easy to kill, and he gets -1 attack for each card in your hand. So obviously the idea is that you would pitch all your cards to get a bunch of attack buffs, and then Kylo Ren comes out at a 4/5/4. If your opponent wants to, they can probably kill Kylo Ren by sneezing on him. I mean, it's not going to be hard. Takedown does it. Freaking rogue operative. I mean, there's so many things in the world that kill Kylo Ren. And I think that's led a lot of people to think that he's not good. I don't think that's true. I think that there is so much utility in being able to elect to get a card from your hand to your discard pile. The discard pile in a deck that is built to take advantage of it can function as an extension of your hand. Sometimes the discard pile is precisely where you want a card to be. Combine that with the fact that when he does that, he's getting very tangible value out of it. Your opponent can respond to it. You have to do this as an action. And so you can buff a unit, and then if your opponent wants to, they can do something to that unit and remove your buff that you gave them. But there's always value in making your opponent do something. And so, yeah, maybe you spin the card and you buff your unit, and then your opponent goes, I'll kill it right away. You still force them to do something, and you may not have forced them to do that thing unless you had used Kylo. And so I think that there's a lot of value there in forcing your opponent to respond to these attack buffs that you're throwing out for free. And then when you think about cards like Palpatine's Return that can get cards out of the discard pile and give you a discount on them, there's just a lot of stuff that can go on. He's got a ship that you can play from your discard pile after discarding it. And I think that, discard is the kind of effect where, I think about Bossk and it's like, okay, are we going to get a lot more bounties? The answer is maybe not. But the prospect for discard, it's going to be solid. It may take a few sets before a lot of them come to pass, but there's just so much that you can play with in a card game that's centered around discard that I think that we will see support for Kylo. And in the meantime, he's already capable of just going very, very fast. +2 attack for no resources just demands a response. And if your opponent can't muster it, he's going to end the game very, very quickly. I think Kylo Ren has a lot of potential. I am parking him near the top of A. I think he's going to be one of the best aggro leaders in the game, and I think he's only going to get better as he goes. Katan, the Princess in Exile, she's a Mandalorian, if you couldn't tell. She's got an action where you tap her, and if you attacked with a Mandalorian unit this phase, so you have to have already done that, you get to deal 1 damage to a unit. Free damage. There's a lot of that going around in this set. You just get to deal a damage to something if you jump through a little hoop. And it's not that bad of a hoop, really. On her deployed side, she's a 6/4/7. Those are very solid stats as long as you forget that Boba Villain exists. And on attack, you can deal 1 damage to a unit, and then you get that kicker where if you attacked with another Mandalorian unit this phase, you can deal another damage to a unit. And they don't have to be the same thing. The card explicitly states that you can park the damage in 2 different places if you want. I think Bo-Katan is really cool. She is a little bit limited in her deck building, obviously, because she has to have Mandalorians to trigger off of. So hopefully we get a lot more of those in the future so that she can kind of stay relevant and keep up with everybody as everybody's tool sets expand. But already she's got a lot of really good cards that are Mandalorians. Sabine is one of the best early units in the game, and she's a Mandalorian. You've got Ketsu Onyo, who is a Mandalorian. We've gotten a ton of good Mandalorian support this set, particularly in blue. There's a lot of fun Mandalorians going around, but I'm really interested in trying Bo-Katan in green. I think that that ambush effect from ECL and potentially slotting in timely intervention as well to make the Mandalorian attacks happen more consistently is going to get you that free damage more often. I really like Sundari Peacekeeper. It's a Mandalorian and it's just crazy overstated for what it's doing. There's a lot to like here. It's just sadly tied to the Mandalorian trait, and that means that you're right to be a little bit skeptical. Just because her future prospects may not be great, I'm going to park her in B, but she's really flirting with A. And really Gar is kind of in that same boat, but in reverse. He's A flirting with B, depending on how much support he gets in the future. But yeah, I think Bo-Katan is really good. Anybody who tells you that free damage doesn't matter is full of it. Free damage is really, really good in games like this. Han Solo. Worth the risk. This is our other aggression hero leader. You tap him. You play a unit from your hand, costs 1 less, and then you deal 2 damage to it. He deploys at 5 resources. He's a 3/6, 5/6, not bad at all. And then as an action, you can play a unit from your hand. It costs 1 less, deal 2 damage to it. So same thing on the deploy side as on the leader side. It's just got no restriction. You don't have to tap Han to do that. You can do it as many times as you want. You can get that discount as long as you damage the unit. Whoo boy, whoo baby. I'm not going to talk too long about this leader. I don't think I want to be just simple and to the point. I think damage for ramp is a trade that you make like every time. This ability is crazy flexible. Because there are units that you're going to have in your hand that do not care about this damage that Han is going to do to them. You're going to have units in your deck that want to be damaged. You're going to have cards in your deck that synergize with something being damaged. And so this damage that Han is dealing doesn't have to be a downside depending on how you build your deck. And so for something that doesn't have to be a downside, you're getting an incredible payoff. You're getting free ramp for units, which you want to have a lot of anyway. When you compare this to Finn, it's like he's jumping through this hoop, you're definitely losing some value, and maybe you get a shield. And it costs you money. This is saving you money, and the damage might actually be doing you a favor. I think he's nuts. I think that on top of this amazing ability, he's got a really aggressive deploy cost. His stats are fine. 3/6 isn't going to set the world on fire, but you're not here for the leader unit. It would be an interesting conversation if the leader unit was bad, because then it'd be like, well, I have to take this bad leader unit to get this great ability. That's not what's happening, though. You get this great ability, and then the leader is totally fine. And moreover, unlike a lot of leaders, you kind of don't care if Han dies. Yeah, you get the advantage when he's deployed of being able to do that ramp limitlessly as long as you have the cards to support it. But realistically, how many cards can you play? I mean, Han's going to want to have a pretty straightforward ramp, I would think, and include like a mixture of high costs and low costs. You're not necessarily going to be including a bunch of cheap cards where you would want to crank out a bunch. And so it's more just like a small benefit that you might be able to take advantage of, that he has no exhaust requirement to do the ramp thing on his leader side. And what that means is if Han gets ganked, you do not care the majority of the time. You are here because the ability is nuts. And the ability is nuts. I was telling Justin and Tyler, I was like, do I only play Han now? I could end up eating these words, but I just think that Han Solo is going to be really, really good. And even if he's not really, really good, he's gonna be really, really fun. And at the end of the day, that's why we're all here, right? So there is just no world where I cannot put this guy in S tier. Next is Cad Bane, who needs no introductions, so I won't skip ones. When you play an Underworld card, you may exhaust him, and if you do, your opponent chooses a unit they control, and you deal a damage to it. He's Underworld, he's Bounty Hunter, exactly what you would expect. And then if you look at this card, oh no, he's only got 2 attack, but he does have Raid. Once you deploy him at 6 resources. He is a 2/8 with the Raid 2, so he's kind of a 4/8. And then, same thing is going on the side. When you play an Underworld card, you may choose an opponent, they choose a unit, but this time you get 2 damage, and you can only use that ability once each round. So we're going to say the really annoying thing that has to be said. Any villain cunning leader has to live in a world where Boba Fett exists. Boba Fett is a 4/7 who comes out at 5. This is kind of a 4/8 that comes out on 6. Is it worth the whole extra turn to get the extra point of health and have some of your attack be on Raid? No, it's not. Like, Boba's always going to compare favorably to any leader that you get. But I don't think that that's the end of Cad Bane's story. Again, we've talked about this a lot. Free damage is great. Free damage is free damage. It's something that Boba genuinely can't do. And there's a lot of really great Underworld cards that he can do it with. Further, he's a bounty hunter, and we've gotten a lot of trait support for that as well. And then, he's not a 5/4/7, but a 6/2/8 with Raid 2 is really, really good. He's hard to remove from the board. You can shut down Greedos and ping your opponent's stuff. If you play him in red, he has like the easiest Tarkin Town setups ever. The guy just has a lot of really cool stuff going on. So much going on that I don't think it's the end of the world that he is in the same colors as Boba. I think there will be Cad Bane decks that are doing things that Boba cannot do better. I don't know how many of them there will be. I do think in a vacuum Boba is a better leader than Cad Bane, but I think the hoop that a yellow villain leader has to jump through is it going to have a deck where it is genuinely outclassing Boba? And because of the free damage and the trait synergies that Cad has available to him, I really do think that Cad is going to have his own decks that do their own thing, and I'm really excited. I think Cad Bane is super cool. Dr. Aphra, rapacious archaeologist. Somebody was digging in their dictionary there. When the regroup phase starts, you're going to discard a card from your deck. What? Why would you ever want to do that? I don't know. Let's talk about it. You deploy her at 5. She's just a 2/5, and she's fringe, so no trait synergy yet. But she has a conditional attack buff. While there's 5 or more different costs among cards in your discard pile, we've seen that condition on a couple of cards, this unit gets plus 3/0. So there's a strong potential that she's going to come out as a 5/5/5. When she's deployed, you choose 3 cards in your discard pile with different names, and if you do, you return one of them at random to your hand. So you're getting a 5/5/5 on deploy with some conditional card draw. This is a very similar story to what I was talking about with Kylo. I think that being able to kind of play with the discard pile is a really interesting space to be in. I think it's got a lot of potential. Is she there now? No, she's not. There's just not enough, especially in this color, that is dealing with the discard pile for me to feel confident about her early. But the discard pile is a great sandpit to be in. She's got great art. She's got a totally fine deploy turn, and I think that eventually she will get there. It's just not going to be now, but I believe in her a little bit more than the rest of these fellas. I think about Hondo, and it's like, well, he would have to get a lot more smuggle cards, and they'd have to be great. Again, I just really believe in the discard pile, as a place that is going to see a lot of future support. And so Dr. Aphra, I think, is going to be fine. Don't play her in Limited. I think she'd probably be absolutely atrocious in Limited. And I may be wrong about that, but we'll see. Fennec Stand. We've entered our final color combination with Hero Yellow. She is an underworld leader who you spend a resource and you tap her, and you can play a unit that costs 4 or less from your hand, and you give it Ambush. Ambush on a stick. Not bad. When you deploy her at 5 resources, she's a 4/4. That's a little underwhelming, but she does have Saboteur to kind of make up for it. And then as an action, she gets to do the same thing that she did on the leader side for free. She plays a unit that costs 4 or less from her hand. She gives it Ambush. This is a very similar, funnily enough, it's a very similar conversation that we were having with the Boba Hero leader, right? I mean, Ambush is just, it's good. It's good to have around. And being able to give it to units that don't already have it, I think is really, really cool. One other leader that I'm reminded of here is Chewbacca from set 1. I didn't like including Sentinel units in Chewbacca because in my mind that card would have already been balanced around it having Sentinel on it, and Chewbacca's whole thing is that it can give a keyword to a card that's not supposed to have it. So I didn't want to play Sentinels in Chewbacca. Similarly, I don't really want to play cards that have Ambush in Fennec. I want to play cards that don't have Ambush, and I want to give it to him. And there's a lot of really great targets for that. And so I think that Fennec, despite having a pretty underwhelming leader that can get killed really, really quickly, there's just so much to like about Ambush and about a deck that can deal it out that I feel pretty good about her having a deck. And moreover, a lot of the Cunning hero decks have been kind of hyper-specific to this point. Fennec may be able to get away with just playing like a good stuff deck and being able to make it pop with that Ambush ability. And so I think Fennec is really cool. I'm very interested in personally messing around with some Fennec decks. I think it's going to be great. Gonna park it in the middle of the B tier, even though I said the word great. What are you gonna do? You got Lando Calrissian with impeccable taste. He's an underworld leader. You tap him. You play a card using Smuggle, and it costs 2 less. Pretty cool. But to do it, you have to defeat a resource that you own and control. So you are ramping down to use this ability. When he deploys really early. He's deploying at 4 resources, and he's at 2/5, and you get that same thing. You don't have to tap him, but you do only get to use the ability once per round. So you're getting a 2 resource discount on a Smuggle card, and you're ramping down to do it. This is a little bit different than other ramping abilities that we've talked about to this point, like Jabba and Han, because to play a card with Smuggle, almost invariably so far, you're having to pay more for that privilege, and so it's more like Lando's bringing you back to par. A lot of times the Smuggle cost is effectively 2 additional resources, and Lando kind of offsets that. And so in some ways you could say that what Lando boils down to is you're ramping down for card advantage. That's the advantage of Smuggle. You play it from your resource row and you get to replace it from the top of your deck. So it's almost like you got an extra card in your hand that you were able to play. And so if you take away all the hoops and the resources and everything, this is what it boils down to. Lando is getting you card advantage for ramping down, plus whatever additional Smuggle synergies you manage to find with him. Is this going to be worth it? It's hard to say. I'm skeptical, but there's a lot of people that I really, really respect that have done some early work with Lando and are coming back with really enthusiastic support. I do think that there's a lot that you can do here. These this playing around that he does with the smuggling and all that, it's all totally up to you when and how you do that. And so I think that agency kind of offsets some of the awkwardness of having to ramp down. You can choose when to do that. And I think that puts a lot of the power back into the player's hand. And so personally, I'm skeptical because I haven't actually messed around with him myself. But I just have to trust the people who are saying that it's going to happen. Unlike Hondo, I think that he's got a little more going on with smuggle, because Hondo gets you a little bit of marginal advantage for playing smuggle cards that may not necessarily be balanced well enough to be playable. Lando takes those same smuggle cards and is able to leverage the flexibility that they give you by giving you a sorely needed discount on them. And so that's why I'm a little higher on Lando as a smuggle leader than I am about Hondo. I just realized how close those names were together. So yeah, this is one of those leaders that I'm just not brave enough to give you guys the receipts of saying that he's bad. I don't see it right now, but at only 4 deploy, and a really flexible ability that can do a lot of interesting tricks, especially with the new Millennium Falcon and other cool smuggle cards that are out there. I do think that he'll get there. It just probably won't be me who finds out how it's done. And lastly, we have the other starter leader. It is the Mandalorian, Sworn of the Creed. Cool traits, he's Mandalorian and Bounty Hunter. When you play an upgrade, you may exhaust this leader, and if you do, you exhaust an enemy unit with 4 or less remaining HP. That's a pretty cool ability that is going to get you a lot of tempo. Remember, bounties count as upgrades, so he gets some synergy with both buffing his own units and putting those bounties out. He's a 6 deploy, 4/7, which is totally fine. And then when you play an upgrade, you may exhaust an enemy unit with 6 or less remaining HP. So the threshold goes up a little bit. I think Mandalorian is stupid fun. I've gotten to play around with him a lot, and I think he's going to have some super cool synergies in virtually all of the colors. It is worth noting, it's worth talking a little bit about exhaust and what it means for the game. It's fundamentally a tempo effect. You're not permanently affecting their board. You're slowing them down. And so you need to be able to take advantage of the fact that you've slowed them down. And usually that means that you're trying to go fast on your own. Whether that synergizes in a big way with the kind of upgrade plan that Mandalorian is doing, I think that kind of remains to be seen. Personally, I'm really optimistic. I think that upgrades, when you do them, can get you a lot of your own personal tempo, and so there's this like fundamental tug of war thing happening in a game of SWU that I think Mandalorian just makes a lot of sense with. I mean, you're playing an upgrade, which is advancing your board state, and then you're also simultaneously slowing down your opponent. I think that just kind of makes sense. And so because of that, I'm pretty high on Mandalorian. I think that he could make a lot of waves. It's just going to be about finding the balance of upgrades to events and things like that. Because, if things go wrong, upgrades can be really tough to make hay out of. And so, if you don't mind, I don't know how this is going to look on camera, but I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in a little bit here, and you'll notice I couldn't quite place anything in the garbage tier. I definitely could have in set 1. In set 1, I was confident that IG-88, Hera, and eventually I came around to the idea that Jyn was down there and just absolutely not worth playing at all. Transparently, I don't feel that negatively about any of these leaders yet. I think any of the CT leaders could eventually move down to garbage. I don't really see it happening for any of the B tier leaders. It's possible that things really look more like this, and I'm just being too generous. But I don't know. I just don't quite think so. I think that all of these leaders have a lot of potential. I think that there's good things at play. And, that's really cool to see this early in the game's lifespan, to have a set where pretty much 18 out of 18 leaders are exciting to talk about and to think about. And so, who knows? I could be wrong about all of this. And that's one of the fun things for you, is that I get to put these receipts out onto the internet. And if I'm super duper wrong about all of them, then you get to talk to me about it. So yeah, this video went a lot longer than I thought that it would, but there's a lot to talk about. I think these leaders are super duper exciting. And I am just really pumped for Shadows of the Galaxy. I think it's going to be a great set. I think that so many decks are going to get additional tools that they need. And one thing that I really love when I'm playing a card game is for the meta to be diverse. And for me to really feel like I can bring a deck that I'm personally attached to and that I really want to play to an event. And when I look at this collection of leaders, and I think about the cards that we've seen so far, I think that set 2 of Star Wars Unlimited is going to give us that kind of environment. So I hope that that ends up coming to pass. I hope that you tell me if you think I'm wrong in the comments about any of these leaders, and I hope that you will stick around and enjoy more Garbage Rollers content in the future. Until then, may the Force be with you. Like and subscribe the Garbage Rollers. If you don't, bad things will happen to your family.